going to start this one off a little bit crazier than usual, and I'm going to talk about firstly the Transformer origin story, which as I got to the bottom of the page I realized some of this info is in there already, and you start to see that in the origin story and with some of the characters in the very beginning that only had maybe 5 episodes that they were in, you'll hear of things like Vectorus, the vector angle, or the vector cube, or the vectorous solid, platonic solid, or one of the characters' names or have that in it. And also you'll see that there is a spark, the spark of life in there and stuff, and 2 large characters, or characters that are big enough to be called a being in themselves, which although they may be a collective, each one, the Primus and the Unicron, and some of the storylines that's going to be noted, that all of our stuff we see on TV and all the cartoons were always a part of the metadata field, where information was given through the illusion to a reality state, and once we realize the reality of it, although we may still be immersed in illusion, we could see the connections, or the connection will be made. It's not as if you're going to do it yourself. The gods will be there individually making those connections, or for anybody interested in the mindset flowing through those channels. We also have words like the Merkaba, which is a platonic solid, and there are higher platonic solids than the 5 that were revealed by Plato and other mathematicians, and probably beings that discovered it before then. But I'm going to use this term since the beginning of our slave history, which is probably marked by the end of Atlantis, and even during the time of Atlantis there were highly developed beings, slave beings, and those were actually probably could get the name Terrans, or another name. If you look at some of the old books on Atlantis, and when they describe the people and the stuff in Atlantis, they weren't talking about the gods, they were talking about the beings, and those beings that were like us, not human, but were co-creators with God, and when they let God take over their bodies, they would be called humans when God had full control over them. So this wasn't just going to be about the gods. I'm going to also talk about the government, because I want to make people aware that the government's been monitoring this whole situation. They haven't always acted in the most rightful nature. They have created counter contradictions which were covered up in periods of time. Let's say through the 1950s to 1960s, if they made a mistake, it was covered up, and they said they adjusted and changed, which really they were creating folly, which is actual crimes in their, not just in their minds, but in physicality, which resulted in collisions and changes, like people dying. Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, they decided just to kill them instead of waiting for God's plan. Dropping the bomb with the technology they gained in Hiroshima, and these are all just old events. Like, I want to bring up new ones, but I see that the channels are being blocked, even though I'd love to give those to you. And why? Before they get swept under the rug again. Let's say from 2007 the Illuminati falls, and they say they're going to adjust and change their ways. Oh, we're going to adjust and give over the power to the government, but we still don't want to ever be punished for a crime. Then it happens because the gods allow it, because their most important thing was their little experiment against the Draconians, which is not actually a war, which is just a bid for property in space, is another cooler way to say it, which is actually a real way to say it. The war was here on us in our bodies, and people don't know how many times their brains were actually zapped, or the whole civilization at once shut off from power, because during some of those I didn't go to sleep, but sometimes when you guys were partially awake, I was shut off all the way. So I know we all been shut off. But when I talk about the government's brains may have been shut off, but let's just say every government official lives well off with a high enough technology to create rooms and atmospheres so that they don't suffer as much as the general public did, who lives on the surface of the earth. Even in other countries they have bomb shelters, and here in America we don't even have that. So I'm just going to say other people had their energy fields, other countries had their energy fields, and allowed enough exposure for people to live okay. But here in America, we took a brunt of it for being so open and naive, which was a part of God's plan also, to leave us dumb so they could take over our vessels. So I am kind of blabbing on here, but I want to cover some stuff. So, and I always try to get to it. So Metatron's cube. Metatron's cube, which is an actual configuration which fits inside the energy cocoon of the body. And I'm always talking about the dual body, and whenever we talk about energy, we're talking about the double body, which a lot of people don't know because they're not in touch with, because God runs it most of the time. But at the same time, it's a dual existence, so you have to touch it so many times, like during the day, and God was taking over those and co-touching it with you. If not, it would develop. After a period of time, it grows and becomes thicker. It's like a light. Let's say if the edge of the light was, you'll see like the cocoon would have a thicker layer. Well, if it starts to get thick enough, you start retaining awareness. Awareness grows. This is something a lot of people don't know. And then you start filling in other portions of yourself and become a thick luminous being. And you can just tell by my voice that that would sound good. And that's retention of knowledge and storing stuff instead of how we are. If you ever monitor yourself how many times you say or what during the day, you know just that we're totally in the wrong place nowadays. And sometimes we feel like the energy body's out of us and partially away, which is kind of a term the shamans used to use, but I think it's less of a term and more of an actuality. Sometimes we feel them both compressed on us when we have a high enough energy level, when this bullshit isn't going on, like in other times or before the brunt of this war started going on. There were shamans who had a more developed energy body by the gods to store knowledge, and some of us have kind of rebuted even the crime of that, which isn't that important to anybody at all, really. That's one of the least concerns you should have. But an important fact is that this energy body usually could be right here. You could be living in a higher energy state with 13 dynamics going on of alignment, which is something that people don't know about either. The alignment in the body, left side awareness, right side awareness, or left side awareness, right side awareness. This thin area called the Higgs boson by scientific terms, which is a dimensional place. You got a 1 dimension, 2 dimension, or a 2, 3. Then you have a 4 right here. So we're always trapped in this little thin area, and God comes in here and sees us, but He takes over this and this. That's where most people are. Some have a 5D, which is from here, pushed out a little closer to the front. Another thing you don't know is that the energy body is round. And if this was the front of the energy body, the forces of life and death that act upon us, because everything is pushed and pulled by other natures in energy, so it gets hit in the front. We have a little indenture here. So those forces hit us here in the front. Well, if the 4D was still in the middle, the 5D is a little closer up in the front. So you can see 4, 3, 2 from behind you, and the 1 where you would be inside of nature, which you would still be able to tell your surroundings, but be kind of blurry. Dreamers sometimes look like drunkards when they're walking around, because the solidarity of the surface area and the tension of that tonal are kind of they're too consolidated and don't have enough possibilities within their energy configuration unless you're gazing at one of those objects directly, like a rock or a tree. It doesn't have to be something all crazy. It could be anything in nature. Simpler the better. So you have forces and rings of fire, or rings. They look like incandescent rings of fire, which is probably might be fire because it's awareness or intent, which is an actual force. And if it has a force, it must have an essence or omni-essence or omnipresence. Therefore, it does act upon you. These are things we don't know either. In any culture that is raised and born in other times, except for the one in our time of the experiment, all these things are the basis for knowledge, the basis for knowing. No one gives a damn about a large ass fry, super fries, super drink, my car this, my car gasoline. What the fuck, gasoline? Give me a break. That's what our brains should be saying. That's what our inner dialogue should be going through. Now, I was kind of talking about another topic before I got onto that, but that kind of took an important step towards what I'm discussing. So you also have metadata. The government stores all kinds of energy and knowledge like this about scientific principles, which actually can be seen with the untrained eye. We don't even see things on the cellular level of perceiving stuff as in the oneness of stuff. We don't isolate things to see them in a cellular level on that cause. But the subatomic level is something we should be also concerned with, because that's our not so far future. Not the end of the future, but where we need to get to before we can start doing this kind of stuff. And there's a couple of gateways we're going to need to go through. And it's going to take years. I mean, your kids are going to be thinking of this stuff. For the most part, for us, this kind of passed by. And even for my kids, they may be lucky and live a well life as best we can, and that may be enough. I'm going to let God explain the rest of that. Metadata. The government's collecting metadata. They got that metadata. The government over the people? Well, it's been that way, but should it be? We should all be intelligent enough for it not to be, but the government's been collecting data. So therefore they feel they're the smartest. They'll know what's best for you. You don't have a say in it. When they change your cities, your thought beliefs, your patterns subliminally on the subatomic and cellular level. Get up on game. If you need help, watch my videos. You want to make a comment? Ask me a question about some of these things? I would love to help anybody that would love to help themselves. As a unified planet of beings that all seek knowledge, I'm not saying I love every single asshole on this planet. I would love to help people. We're not going to talk about these dirty Brahmins. Dirty. Alright. 13 dynamics of... Can't read my writing. I don't know what that word is. 13 dynamics of another, but I don't know why I put another. 13 dynamics. Let me remember this one. 13 dynamics of alignment within a certain configuration, energetic configuration. Maybe it's the molecular possibilities of the 8 spheres within a totality little thing of awareness and knowledge. Let me try to figure this out real quick. I know that 13 dynamics, you need 13 dynamics to create a higher platonic solid, and it probably is the Merkaba. I just remember going through the 13 dynamic stage and remembering some of these things like Merkaba, but really I don't give a damn about the name Merkaba. The energy at the time was what was important, not just documenting it because of the actions that were taking place at the time. It wasn't that I was in a state where I could just examine things and admire the beauty and the ever essence of life. There was a war going on this planet, and my being was being crushed, so I had to know what the hell was going on and what I was being subjected to, because these higher light codes and stuff going on this planet are not just light codes and things you could interpret on your own. It's amount of a pressure. Within nature, there's pressure on things. There is an outside force which we call upon ourselves to bear those pressures, and it's not all a bad thing. I'm not saying that it's not all a bad thing. Subjection and being subjugated may be at certain points, but we have a threshold, and as long as we push the limits of our threshold without totally destroying ourselves, we're okay. That shouldn't even be a real possibility with guidance from other members in a proper community, which we're going to have to know what those things are in the future. We should already begin the process of that, in which it probably is. But I'm just saying that you can't sweep everything under the carpet. Time has an ebb and flow. The ebb and flow of this planet was altered, and it's not going to be fixed. Well, it will be fixed, and nobody will really know or know enough in depth to be having any objections about it, which was a part of the experiment. Dirty. Alright, man. Metadata, government taking over. Peace.